The clock on the hospital wall showed 2:17 in the morning when Vivian Marlowe realized she was completely alone, not just in the room, but in her entire life. Her fingers, thin and trembling from months of treatments, struggled to hold the phone. She needed to hear his voice. James, the man who had promised to be there through everything. She dialed from memory, the numbers blurring through her tears. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then a voice answered. But it wasn't James. It was someone else entirely, a stranger, a man with a tired, gentle voice who had no idea that answering this call would change everything, for both of them. "Please," Vivian whispered into the phone, too weak to realize her mistake. "Please stay with me tonight. I don't want to die alone." On the other end of the line, in a small apartment across the city, a janitor named Callum Reed sat up in his bed. He had just finished a double-shift cleaning offices downtown. His body ached. His eyes burned from exhaustion. But something in that woman's voice made him forget all of it. "I think you have the wrong number," he said softly. "I don't care," she replied, her voice breaking. "I just need someone. Anyone. Please don't hang up." Callum looked at the clock. He had to be up in 4 hours to take his daughter Hazel to school before his morning shift. Every logical part of his brain told him to end the call. But something deeper, something human, wouldn't let him. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." What happened next would become a story that neither of them could have ever imagined. A story of 2 worlds colliding, of secrets and lies, of betrayal and redemption. A story that would prove that sometimes the most important calls in our lives are the ones we never meant to make. Callum Reed had never planned to become a janitor. 10 years ago he was finishing his degree in mechanical engineering, dreaming of designing cars, maybe even opening his own auto repair shop someday. He had a wife named Rosalind who believed in him. They had just welcomed their daughter Hazel into the world. Life was simple but beautiful. Then Rosalind got sick. The medical bills came first like a slow tide, then like a flood. Within 2 years they had drained every account, sold every possession of value, and borrowed from everyone who would lend. Callum dropped out of school to work 2 jobs, then 3. He cleaned office buildings at night and worked at a small auto repair shop during the day. He did everything he could. But cancer doesn't care about sacrifice. It doesn't reward hard work or punish neglect. It simply takes. Rosalind passed away when Hazel was 3 years old. She never got to see her daughter's first day of school, never got to braid her hair or teach her to ride a bike. All she left behind was a photo on the shelf and a little girl who sometimes still asked why Mommy couldn't come back from the stars. Now, 7 years later, Callum was still cleaning offices. The auto shop had closed during hard economic times, and the engineering degree remained unfinished. He worked nights so he could be there when Hazel came home from school. He lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that wasn't great, but wasn't dangerous either. He drove a car that needed more repairs than he had time to make. But Hazel was healthy. Hazel was happy. Hazel was everything. That was enough. That had to be enough. On the night of the phone call, Hazel was sleeping at her best friend Piper's house. Callum had worked a double shift to cover for a co-worker whose mother was in the hospital. He came home around midnight, ate cold leftover pasta standing at the kitchen counter, and collapsed onto his bed without even changing clothes. When the phone rang at 2:15 a.m., his first thought was that something had happened to Hazel. He grabbed the phone with his heart pounding, but instead of Piper's mother, he heard a woman crying. James, please, I know it's late, but I need you. The doctors, they said it's worse than they thought. I don't have as much time as they said. Please, I can't do this alone." Callum's fear shifted into confusion. "I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. There's no James here." There was a long pause. He could hear her breathing, ragged and uneven. "Oh," she said finally, her voice small and broken. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have... The numbers are so small on this phone. I can barely see." "It's okay," Callum said gently. Happens to everyone. Do you want me to help you find the right number? Another pause. Longer this time. He's not coming anyway, she whispered. I called him 6 times today. He never answers anymore, not since... She didn't finish the sentence. Callum should have said good night, should have wished her well and ended the call. Instead, he found himself asking, since what? Since he found out I was dying. The words hung in the darkness of Callum's bedroom. He sat up slowly, fully awake now. I'm sorry, he said. I'm really sorry. Don't be. I should be used to it by now. People leave. That's what they do. My father left when I was young. My mother died when I was 22. My business partners are circling like sharks, waiting to divide everything I built the moment I'm gone. And James, she laughed bitterly. James was supposed to be different. We were supposed to get married next spring. I thought he loved me. But it turns out he loved the idea of me, the healthy me, the useful me, the me that could attend parties and sign checks and make him look good. This version of me, the one who can't get out of bed without help, the one who might not see another Christmas, he doesn't want that version. Callum felt something tighten in his chest. He thought of Rosalind, how he had held her hand through every treatment, every setback, every moment of hope and despair, how he would have given anything for more time, even just one more day. That's not love, he said quietly. What he's doing, that's not what love looks like. I know, she said. I think I always knew. But when you're dying, you don't want to be right about things like that. You want to believe in fairy tales. You want to believe someone will show up and hold your hand and tell you everything will be okay, even if it won't. What's your name? Callum asked. Vivienne Marlowe. The name sounded familiar, but Callum couldn't place it. I'm Callum. Most people call me Cal. Cal, she repeated softly. That's a good name. Strong. Simple. My mom picked it. She said it meant devotion in some old language. I think she just liked how it sounded. For the first time, he heard something like a smile in Vivienne's voice. Mothers always have their reasons. They talked for 2 more hours. About nothing important. About everything important. Callum told her about Hazel, about her gap-toothed smile and her obsession with dinosaurs, and her dream of becoming a veterinarian. Vivienne told him about her company, Marlowe Industries, a tech firm she had built from nothing after her mother's death. She told him about the gardens she designed at her estate, how she spent hours among the roses because her mother had loved them. Neither of them mentioned her illness again. Neither of them needed to. When the first light of dawn began to creep through Callum's window, Vivienne's voice had grown soft with exhaustion. I should let you sleep, she murmured. You've been so kind, you didn't have to stay on the line. I wanted to, Callum said, and he meant it. Why? You don't even know me. Callum thought for a moment. Someone once did the same for me, stayed when they didn't have to. It made all the difference. Maybe this is just me passing it forward. There was a long pause. When Vivienne spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Cal, I'm scared. I don't want to die. Not yet. There's so much I haven't done. So many things I got wrong. I thought I had time to fix them. But time is the one thing money can't buy. I know, Cal said, I know. Would it be too strange if I asked you to come here? To the hospital? I know we've never met. I know this is completely unreasonable, but I feel like I've known you longer than just one night. And I don't want to hang up. I don't want to go back to being alone. Callum looked at the photo of Rosalind on his shelf. Her smile seemed to encourage him. Do something good, she seemed to say. Be someone's light. Tell me where you are, he said. Harborview Medical Center was not the kind of hospital Callum was used to. The lobby looked more like a luxury hotel than a healthcare facility. There were fresh flowers on every surface, original paintings on the walls, and staff members who spoke in hushed, careful voices. This was where the wealthy came when their bodies failed them, a place where money could buy privacy and comfort, even if it couldn't buy a cure. Callum felt out of place immediately. He was still wearing his work clothes, dark pants and a gray polo shirt, with a small stain on the collar. He hadn't had time to shower or change. He was running on 0 sleep and 3 cups of coffee. The security guard at the front desk looked at him like he had wandered in from the wrong side of town. "I'm here to see Vivian Marlowe," Callum said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The guard's expression shifted instantly. "And you are?" "A friend. She's expecting me. My name is Callum Reed." A quick phone call confirmed this. The guard's attitude changed completely. Suddenly, Callum was being escorted personally to the private wing on the top floor, where the rooms had actual names instead of numbers. The door to the Rosewood suite was slightly open. Callum knocked gently and heard a weak voice say, "Come in." He wasn't prepared for what he saw. Vivian Marlowe was thin in the way that only serious illness can make a person thin, as if life itself was slowly being subtracted from her body. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her dark hair was cut short, probably to make it easier to manage. She was surrounded by medical equipment, monitors, and IV stands and machines that beeped softly in the background, but her eyes were alive. That was the first thing Callum noticed. Despite everything, her eyes burned with intelligence, warmth, and something that might have been hope. "You came," she said, and her voice cracked slightly on the words, "I didn't think you would actually come." Callum walked slowly to the chair beside her bed and sat down. "I said I would. People say a lot of things. I'm not most people." Vivian studied his face for a long moment, as if searching for the catch, the hidden agenda, the secret motive. Finding none, she let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for a very long time. "No," she said softly, "I don't think you are." They talked for another hour. In person, Vivian was different than she had been on the phone, more guarded, more aware of the strange power imbalance between them. She was a billionaire. He was a janitor. She was dying. He was healthy. Every traditional measure said they had nothing in common, but somehow none of that seemed to matter. Callum told her more about Hazel, about how her mother had died, about how he was trying to raise her alone while working night shifts and still dreaming of someday finishing his engineering degree. Vivian listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at his stories about Hazel's adventures and disasters. In return, Vivian told him about the loneliness that money couldn't fix, how her board of directors saw her as a liability now, something to be managed rather than respected, how James had slowly withdrawn from their relationship as her health declined, always with reasonable excuses, always with promises he never kept, how her own family, distant cousins she barely knew, had already begun circling, making inquiries about her estate, her assets, her will. "Everyone wants something from me," she said. "Everyone except you. You don't even know what I have." "I know you're hurting," Callum said simply. "That's enough." When visiting hours ended and a nurse came to usher Callum out, Vivian grabbed his hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were fierce. "Will you come back?" she asked. Callum thought of all the reasons he shouldn't. His job, his daughter, the impossibility of being involved with someone so far outside his world. Then he thought of Rosalind, dying alone while he was stuck at work, trying to earn money that came too late. "Yes," he said, "I'll come back." He kept his promise. Over the next 2 weeks, Callum visited Vivian every evening after picking Hazel up from school. He would drop Hazel at Piper's house, or if that wasn't possible, he would bring her along. The first time Hazel met Vivian, she walked into the hospital room, looked at all the machines, and asked with the blunt honesty of a 10-year-old, "Are you going to die?" Callum started to apologize, but Vivian just smiled. "Maybe," she said. "The doctors aren't sure yet. Do you think I should?" Hazel considered this seriously. "No, you have nice eyes. People with nice eyes shouldn't die." From that moment, Vivian and Hazel were friends. The visits became routine. Callum would bring coffee, sometimes home-cooked food when Vivian was well enough to eat. Hazel would bring drawings and stories from school. Vivian, in turn, would share her own stories, tales of building her company from nothing, of traveling the world, of the adventures she had lived before her illness caught up with her. It was during one of these visits that Vivienne made her first offer. "I need a favor," she said, her voice careful. Callum raised an eyebrow. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that might sound crazy, but hear me out." She explained that her board of directors was meeting next week to discuss her future at the company, specifically whether she should step down due to her health. Several board members had allied themselves with James, who had been positioning himself as her likely successor, or rather, her former likely successor. "Former?" Callum asked. "I ended things with him," Vivienne said, 3 days ago. I finally told him I knew he was only staying for the money and the power, that I had seen the text messages between him and my board members, that I understood exactly what he was planning. What happened? He didn't even try to deny it. He just got angry, told me I was making a mistake, that no one else would want me now, that I was going to die alone and forgotten. She smiled bitterly. He wasn't wrong about all of it. He was wrong about the most important part, Callum said quietly. Vivienne looked at him, her eyes glistening. "That's why I need your help. The board thinks I'm weak. They think I'm alone. They think they can push me out because I have no one standing beside me. But if you came to the meeting, if you sat next to me, if you pretended to be someone who matters to me, you want me to pretend to be your boyfriend? I know how it sounds. I know it's asking too much, but just one meeting. Just enough to make them doubt themselves. Enough to buy me time." Callum should have said no. The whole idea was absurd. He was a janitor with a high school diploma and work clothes with stains on them. The board of a major tech company would see through him in seconds. But he remembered how Vivienne had sounded on that first phone call, how she had begged him not to leave her alone, how she still, after everything, was fighting for something that mattered to her. "Okay," he said, "I'll do it." Vivienne's face transformed with relief and gratitude. "Really? You'll really do this for me?" "On one condition." "Name it. Teach me what I need to know. I'm not going to embarrass you in front of your board. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it right." The next 3 days were like nothing Callum had ever experienced. He entered a world he had only seen in movies, a world of designer clothes and etiquette lessons and practice conversations about market trends and investment strategies. Vivienne arranged for a stylist to visit his apartment, someone who politely but firmly disposed of most of his wardrobe and replaced it with suits that fit better than anything Callum had ever worn. A financial advisor spent 2 hours explaining the basics of Marlowe Industries, just enough for Callum to nod intelligently if anyone asked him direct questions. "You don't need to know everything," Vivienne explained from her hospital bed, coaching him through video calls. "You just need to project confidence. When in doubt, say less. Rich people respect silence. They think it means you know something they don't." "That seems backwards," Callum said. "Welcome to my world." The day of the board meeting arrived. Callum had taken the day off work, citing a family emergency. He wore a charcoal gray suit that cost more than his monthly rent, shoes that were polished so brightly he could see his reflection in them, and a watch that Vivienne had lent him from her own collection, a simple silver piece that apparently cost more than his car. Vivienne, meanwhile, had checked herself out of the hospital against medical advice. She was determined to attend this meeting in person to show the board that she was not going quietly. They arrived at the Marlowe Industries headquarters together. Callum pushed her wheelchair through the massive glass doors while she directed him with quiet commands. The security guards recognized her immediately, but their eyes lingered on Callum with undisguised curiosity. "Who is that?" he heard someone whisper. "No idea. Never seen him before." Good, Callum thought. Mystery was part of the plan. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city skyline. 12 people sat around a massive table, most of them older men in expensive suits. At the head of the table, looking supremely confident, sat James. He was exactly what Callum had expected, tall, handsome, and polished in a way that seemed practiced rather than natural. His smile was perfect, but his eyes were cold. When he saw Callum pushing Vivian's wheelchair, that smile flickered just slightly. "Vivian," James said smoothly, "we weren't expecting you to bring a guest." "Weren't you?" Vivian replied, her voice steady, despite her physical weakness. "This is Callum Reed, my partner." The word partner hung in the air. Around the table, eyebrows rose. Glances were exchanged. "Partner?" James repeated. "Yes." "In every sense of the word." Vivian reached up and took Callum's hand. "He's been helping me navigate some personal matters recently. I wanted him here today." One of the older board members, a man with silver hair and a skeptical expression, leaned forward. "With all due respect, Miss Marlowe, we're discussing sensitive company business. It's unusual to have outsiders present." "Callum isn't an outsider," Vivian said firmly. "He's my family. And as the founder and majority shareholder of this company, I'll decide who attends my meetings." Silence. Callum could feel every eye in the room evaluating him, searching for weakness. He thought of Vivian's advice. When in doubt, say less. So he simply stood behind her chair, one hand on her shoulder, and met their stares without flinching. The meeting proceeded. There were reports about quarterly earnings, discussions about upcoming product launches, and debates about marketing strategies. Callum understood maybe half of what was said, but he nodded when Vivian nodded, and kept his face neutral the rest of the time. Then came the real agenda. "We need to discuss succession planning," James said, his voice smooth as oil. "Given Vivian's health challenges, the board believes it's prudent to identify interim leadership should she need to step back." "Interim leadership," Vivian repeated. "You mean you." "I mean whoever is best positioned to protect the company's interests." "The company's interests or yours?" The room grew very quiet. James's smile hardened slightly. "Vivian, I understand you're going through a difficult time, but these emotional outbursts don't help anyone. The board is simply trying to plan for contingencies." "The board is trying to push me out," Vivian said clearly. "Let's not pretend otherwise. You've been positioning yourself for months, making alliances, spreading rumors about my health, suggesting that I'm no longer capable of leading. But I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. With all due respect, you're sitting in a wheelchair. You can barely—" "I built this company from nothing." Vivian's voice rang through the room. "I wrote the first code. I made the first sales. I hired most of the people in this building. My name is on the door because I earned it, not because I inherited it or manipulated my way into it. And I will decide when I'm done leading this company, not you, not the board, me." James looked to the other board members, clearly expecting support. But something had shifted. The skeptical old man with the silver hair was watching Vivian with something like respect. Others avoided James's eyes entirely. "Furthermore," Vivian continued, "I'll be announcing some changes to my estate planning next week. Changes that will ensure this company's future remains in hands that actually care about its mission. I suggest the board spend less time worrying about succession and more time doing their actual jobs." She turned to Callum. "I'm tired. Let's go." Callum wheeled her toward the door, but before they reached it, James spoke again. "This won't last," he said quietly. "Whatever this is, whoever he is, it won't save you." Callum stopped. He looked at James, really looked at him, and saw exactly what Vivian had described. A man who had loved only what he could gain, who saw people as assets to be acquired and discarded. "Maybe not," Callum said, his voice calm but firm. "But at least she won't be alone. Can you say the same?" He didn't wait for an answer. In the car afterward, Vivian was trembling. Callum thought it was from exhaustion or illness, but then he realized she was crying. "Thank you," she whispered. "I couldn't have done that without you." "You did all the hard work," Callum said. "I just stood there." "You stood there for me. That's more than anyone has done in a very long time." They drove back to the hospital in silence. But something had changed between them. A wall had come down. A bridge had been built. When they reached Vivian's room, her doctors were waiting with grave expressions. There was new test results to discuss, new treatment options to consider. Callum started to leave to give them privacy, but Vivian caught his hand. "Stay," she said. So he stayed. The weeks that followed were a roller coaster of hope and despair. Vivian's doctors had discovered that her illness, while serious, might respond to an experimental treatment program. The odds weren't great, maybe 30%, but it was better than zero. 30%, Vivian said, staring at the ceiling. In business, I would never take a 30% chance. It's terrible odds. But you're not taking it for business, Callum said. You're taking it for your life, for the chance to see another spring, for the chance to walk in your garden again. She turned to look at him. Will you be there if I do this? I've been there every day so far. Why would I stop? The treatment began. It was brutal. There were days when Vivian couldn't speak, couldn't eat, could barely breathe. There were nights when Callum sat beside her bed while she trembled with fever, holding her hand and telling her stories about nothing just to fill the silence. Hazel visited when she could. She brought cards she made at school, drawings of animals and flowers and stick figures that she said were Daddy and Vivian and me having a picnic. She was too young to fully understand what was happening, but old enough to know that her father cared about this woman very much. Daddy, she asked one night, do you love Vivian like you loved Mommy? Callum didn't know how to answer. He had loved Rosalind with the fierce, uncomplicated love of youth. What he felt for Vivienne was something different, something that had grown slowly out of shared struggle and mutual respect. I think there are different kinds of love, he said finally, and they're all real. Your mom was my first love. Vivian she's someone who needed help, and I'm trying to give it. Maybe that turns into something more someday, or maybe it doesn't. But either way, I'm glad she's in our lives. Hazel thought about this. I'm glad too, she said. She has nice eyes. Remember? I remember. 3 months into the treatment, something remarkable happened. The latest scans showed improvement. Not a cure, not remission, but genuine measurable progress. Vivian's doctors were cautiously optimistic for the first time. Your body is responding, the lead oncologist said, better than we expected. If this continues, we might be looking at years instead of months. Vivian sobbed when she heard the news. Callum held her while she cried, feeling something loosen in his own chest, a tension he hadn't realized he had been carrying. Years, she kept saying. I might have years. You will have years, Callum said firmly. You're too stubborn to die. I figured that out on our first phone call. She laughed through her tears. You might be right about that. As Vivian's health improved, her life began to stabilize in other ways as well. She returned to work part-time, attending board meetings virtually at first, then in person. James had resigned from the board after a financial scandal revealed that he had been secretly funneling company resources to personal projects. Several other board members were replaced with people Vivian actually trusted. The company thrived under her renewed leadership. Stock prices rose. New products launched successfully. The business press wrote glowing profiles about the CEO who refused to die. Through it all, Callum remained by her side, but their relationship was complicated. He still worked as a janitor, still lived in his small apartment, still drove his unreliable car. Vivian offered many times to help him financially, to pay for his education, to set him up with a better job at her company. He always refused. I don't want to owe you anything, he explained. I don't want what we have to be about money. That's what James did. That's what everyone else does. I want to be different. You are different, Vivian said. That's exactly why I want to help. Then respect my decision. Let me earn my own way. It was hard. There were fights. There were misunderstandings. There were nights when they didn't speak to each other, when the gap between their worlds seemed too vast to bridge. But there were also moments of perfect connection. A quiet dinner in Vivian's garden with Hazel chasing fireflies across the lawn. A midnight phone call when Vivian was scared and needed to hear his voice. A Sunday afternoon when they took Hazel to the zoo and pretended, just for a few hours, that they were an ordinary family. 1 year after that first wrong number call, Vivian asked Callum to meet her at the hospital, not because she was sick, but because she had something to show him. He arrived to find her actually standing, in front of the Rosewood suite. She was still thin, still fragile, but her eyes blazed with life. "This is where it started," she said. "This room. That phone call. You answering when you had every reason not to." "I remember," Callum said. "I want to tell you something. Something I've been thinking about for a long time." She took his hands in hers. "I love you, Cal. Not because you stayed. Not because you helped me fight. Not because you stood up to James or held my hand through the treatment. I love you because of who you are. A father who works 2 jobs to give his daughter a better life. A man who answers wrong number calls at 2 a.m. because someone might need help. A person who sees people as people, not as what they can do for him." She took a breath. "I know our lives are different. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't work. But I don't want to spend whatever time I have left worrying about reasons. I want to spend it living, with you, with Hazel. As a family, if you'll have me." Callum was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Rosalind, about the life they had built, and the future they had dreamed of. He thought about Hazel, about what it would mean to bring someone new into their little world. He thought about all the obstacles, all the differences, all the ways this could go wrong. Then he thought about the woman standing in front of him, the woman who had called him by mistake and changed everything. "Yes," he said, "I'll have you. We'll have you, for as long as we get." Vivian's smile was like sunrise after a long night. "Then let's stop wasting time," she said. They were married 6 months later, in Vivian's garden, surrounded by roses. Hazel was the flower girl, scattering petals with serious concentration. The guest list was small, just close friends and family, no board members, no business associates, no one who might have an agenda. During the reception, a reporter asked Vivian how it felt to have found love in such an unexpected way. "I didn't find it," she said, looking at Callum. "I dialed it by accident. But sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never planned for." Wambasam. 5 years have passed since that first phone call. Vivian's health remains stable, not perfect, but stable. She still leads her company, though she has learned to delegate more. She has learned that control isn't the same as success, and that trusting others isn't the same as weakness. Callum finished his engineering degree 2 years ago. He now runs the research and development department at a small automotive company, one that specializes in making cars more efficient and accessible. It was his dream once, and it turned out the dream was still there, just waiting for the right moment to wake up. Hazel is 15 now, taller than her father, with her mother's smile and her own fierce determination. She wants to be a veterinarian, or maybe a marine biologist, or maybe a professional soccer player. She hasn't decided yet. She has time. And on quiet evenings, when the garden is full of fireflies and the roses are blooming, Vivian and Callum sometimes sit on the porch and talk about that night. The night a dying billionaire dialed a wrong number. The night a tired janitor answered. The night 2 strangers found each other in the darkness and held on tight. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't answered?" Callum asks sometimes. "Every day," Vivian says, "and every day I'm grateful you did. Because that's the thing about life. It doesn't follow the plans we make. It doesn't care about our schedules or our expectations or our carefully constructed walls. Sometimes it sends us exactly what we need, disguised as a mistake. Sometimes it sends us a wrong number that turns out to be the only right thing in the world. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to answer, it gives us a love story that we never could have written ourselves. A story that proves again and again that the human heart is capable of extraordinary things. All we have to do is pick up the phone. All we have to do is stay. But this story doesn't end there, because life rarely wraps itself up in neat little bows, and the truest stories are the ones that keep going. 2 years into their marriage, when Vivian was feeling stronger than she had in decades, and Callum was settling into his new career, something unexpected happened, something that would test everything they had built. It started with a letter. The envelope arrived at Vivian's estate on a Tuesday morning, addressed not to her, but to Callum. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The return address was a small town in Montana that neither of them had ever visited. Inside was a single page, handwritten in careful script. "Dear Mr. Reed," it began, "you don't know me, but I believe we share something important. My name is Margaret Ellen Reed. I am your grandmother, and I am dying. There are things you need to know before I go, things your father never told you. Please come to Montana. Please let me explain." Callum read the letter 3 times before he could process what it was saying. His father had abandoned the family when Callum was 4 years old. He had no memories of the man, just a vague sense of absence, a hole where a father should have been. His mother had never spoken about him except to say that he was gone and wasn't coming back. "I didn't even know he had family," Callum said, his voice shaking. "I didn't know I had a grandmother." Vivian put her hand on his shoulder. "Do you want to go?" "I don't know. What if it's a scam? What if it's someone trying to get money from us?" "Then we'll find out together." "But what if it's real? What if there's a piece of your history you've been missing all this time?" Callum looked at the letter again. The handwriting was shaky, clearly written by someone elderly, someone who might not have much time left. "I have to know," he said finally. "I have to see for myself." They flew to Montana the following week. Hazel stayed with Piper's family, excited about the adventure, but too young to be burdened with family drama she didn't understand. The town of Clearwater Falls was exactly what its name suggested, a small mountain community built around a stunning waterfall that drew tourists in the summer and left the place empty and quiet in the winter. Margaret Reed lived in a modest cabin on the outskirts of town, surrounded by pine trees and silence. She was waiting on the porch when they arrived. Margaret was 87 years old, with white hair pulled back in a neat bun, and eyes that were still sharp despite her age. She used a cane to walk, but her grip was surprisingly strong when she shook Callum's hand. "You look like him," she said softly, "like Thomas, my son, your father." Callum didn't know what to say. He had imagined this moment in so many different ways, but the reality was overwhelming. "Please," Margaret said, "come inside. There's so much I need to tell you." The cabin was small but warm, filled with photographs and handmade quilts and the comfortable clutter of a life well lived. Margaret made tea with trembling hands while Callum and Vivian sat on a worn couch, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Your father left because he was ashamed," Margaret began, settling into an armchair across from them. "Not of you, never of you, of himself." She told them the story. Thomas Reed had been a brilliant young man, full of potential, but haunted by demons he couldn't escape. He had struggled with addiction for most of his adult life, managing it sometimes, losing control other times. When Callum was born, Thomas had tried to get clean. He really tried. But the pull was too strong. "He left because he thought he was protecting you," Margaret said. "He believed that his presence would only bring harm, that you and your mother would be better off without him. He made me promise never to contact you, never to interfere. He said it was the only gift he could give you, the gift of freedom from his failures." Callum felt tears streaming down his face. All those years of anger, of wondering why he wasn't good enough, of thinking he had been abandoned because he didn't matter. And the truth was something completely different. "Where is he now?" Callum asked. Margaret's expression shifted. Something flickered in her eyes, something that looked like hope mixed with fear. "That's what I need to tell you," she said. "That's why I wrote the letter. Thomas is alive, Callum. He's been sober for 15 years. He lives about an hour from here in a small house he built with his own hands. He works at a wildlife rehabilitation center, helping injured animals heal. He never stopped thinking about you, never stopped loving you, but he's too ashamed to reach out, too afraid that you'll reject him. She leaned forward, her eyes pleading. I'm dying, Callum. The doctors say I have maybe a month left. The last thing I want in this world is to see my son and my grandson together before I go. Will you give an old woman that gift? Will you meet your father? The drive to Thomas Reed's cabin was the longest hour of Callum's life. Vivian held his hand the whole way, not speaking, just being there. The cabin was even smaller than Margaret's, tucked into a clearing surrounded by towering pines. There was a garden out front, carefully tended, and a workshop behind the main building where someone had been building furniture. Thomas was in the workshop when they arrived. He emerged at the sound of their car, wiping sawdust from his hands, and froze when he saw who was getting out. He was 63 years old, but looked older, weathered by time and hardship. His hair was gray, his face lined, his hands calloused from years of physical work. But his eyes were Callum's eyes. Looking at him was like looking into a mirror that showed the future. "Callum," Thomas whispered, "is it really you?" For a long moment no one moved. Years of abandonment, years of questions, years of building a life without a father, all of it hung in the air between them. Then Callum stepped forward. "Mom never told me why you left," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "She never told me about the addiction. She never told me you wanted to protect us. All I knew was that you were gone, and it felt like a rejection, like I wasn't worth staying for." Thomas's face crumpled with pain. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you'd be better off without me. But I was wrong. I was a coward. I should have fought harder, gotten clean sooner, been there for you. I should have been your father." "You should have," Callum agreed. The silence stretched out. Then Callum took another step forward. "But you're here now, and so am I. And I've learned that holding onto anger only hurts the person holding it. So I'm going to make you an offer, the same offer someone once made to me. You can stay. You can be part of our lives. You can meet your granddaughter and your daughter-in-law and all the pieces of my world that you've missed. But only if you're willing to do the work, only if you're willing to show up and keep showing up, even when it's hard." Thomas stared at him, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "I'll do anything," he said. "Anything. I've waited 25 years for this chance. I won't waste it." Callum nodded slowly. "Then, let's start. Let's see if we can build something new." Margaret Reed passed away 3 weeks later, surrounded by her son and grandson, at peace for the first time in decades. Her last words were, "Thank you. Thank you for giving us this." Thomas moved to the city to be closer to Callum's family. It wasn't easy. There were awkward dinners and difficult conversations, and moments when old wounds threatened to tear open. But there were also moments of unexpected connection, of shared laughter, of slowly building trust. Hazel, with the adaptability of youth, accepted her grandfather into her life with characteristic directness. "You missed a lot," she told him on their first meeting. "But I guess that means you have a lot of catching up to do. You should probably start with homework help. I hate fractions." Thomas helped with fractions, and with woodworking, and with gardening, and with all the small, ordinary things that add up to a family. Looking back, Callum sometimes marvels at how it all connects. A wrong number call, a dying billionaire heiress, a letter from a grandmother he never knew existed, a father he thought he'd lost forever. All of it weaving together into a tapestry he could never have designed himself. "Do you believe in fate?" Vivian asked him once. Callum thought about it. "I don't know about fate, but I believe in being open to what life brings you. I believe in answering the phone even when you're tired. I believe in taking chances on people even when it doesn't make sense. I believe that the universe, or God, or whatever you want to call it, puts opportunities in our path, and the only real question is whether we're brave enough to take them." Vivian smiled. "That sounds like something a very wise woman once told me." "Who's that?" A 10-year-old girl who said I had nice eyes and that people with nice eyes shouldn't die. Callum laughed. Hazel's always been wise beyond her years. She gets it from her father. And that night, in the quiet of their garden, with fireflies dancing in the darkness and roses perfuming the air, they held hands and watched the stars. Two people who had found each other against all odds. Two people who had built a family out of fragments and faith. Two people who knew with absolute certainty that the best things in life are the ones we never see coming. All we have to do is answer. All we have to do is stay. This is how the story ends. Or rather, this is where we leave it, because the real story never ends. It continues in the quiet moments, in the ordinary days, in the steady accumulation of love and struggle and growth that makes up a human life. Somewhere in a city apartment, a single father is working late, wondering how he'll pay next month's rent. Somewhere in a hospital room, a dying woman is watching the clock, counting the seconds until visiting hours are over. Somewhere in the night, a phone is about to ring, and a stranger is about to answer. Maybe it's fate. Maybe it's chance. Maybe it doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is what we do when opportunity calls. What matters is whether we pick up. What matters is whether we stay. The phone is ringing. Will you answer?